So, dun dun dun. Colorblind casting. And go.
All right, so when I was in college, I had this moment. I went to Western Washington University. It was super awesome, but I had this moment that's very public and was very on record where I've always wanted to be an actor. I started acting in high school, and I decided I could do that in college as well, and I was going to go do it, but I was always cast as like, behold, I am Jack in The Importance of Being Earnest, a dude who actually couldn't own land at that time. My problem was always I was always asked to not be black. I was always asked to be. So there was always a white role I could fill up until I did Colin Powell and Stuff Happens. After I had quit acting, I was always asked to be somebody else, and for me, it was a really big conflict because unlike very much like so many points of an identity, you can't not see race. It's why the Race and Social Justice Initiative, which deals with 7 points of power dynamic and things like that, they don't lead with religion, they lead with race. Because race is the first thing, and the idea of forcing an audience member to suspend their disbelief of my color, of my heritage, in order to get to a message, it always bothered me. And where I find the most solace is we've answered this problem. It is Hamilton. It is a white story told in an all-black way with all black people, and on page 0 of the actual play, it says no white person may be cast except for the king. No white people. Like, we can do it, and I feel like there's this thirst for art. There's this thirst for theater for people of color, and instead, and for the messages that these other plays have, but at the beginning of this conversation that we're starting to move through now, we could be writing and producing and developing our own things with those messages that had our voices, that had our tone, that had our color in it, instead of needing to talk about them from a place that made white people comfortable.
Okay, so I have something in regards to this. I believe in it to a point. I believe that if you are representing something as historical as possible, or something that is written already.
Then we're getting into the thing is, I'm doing it because it's accurate.
No, not necessarily.
It's the same argument.
It's not.
But it is.
Because, okay.
It is because what you just said is it's historically.
So can we talk about the guy that decided to cast a white man as Dr. Martin Luther King?
But that's, that's wrong.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
That
That's
would be
what I'm talking about, though.
It would be inappropriate. But it's also the same reason of why we cast a black man as the leader of the Avengers when he wasn't.
No, he was.
So
Nick Fury was a black man.
Well, let's say when we originally see him, he's not.
Yes, but in another universe, he is.
In another universe, he is. But I'm saying we had to suspend everything and go, okay, there's that. But it allowed that to happen. That colorblind casting allowed that to happen.
No, because I think it's the same issue as, or I mean, maybe that's the case, maybe it isn't. But it goes along the same lines as when they cast Domino in the new Deadpool movie. Her being a POC with a white blotch instead of the non-distinguished color of her in the comics.
Yeah.
But that was the same issue where I had with the new movie of a superhero that uses web to fly from one building to another. For one comic book series.
We don't know what you're talking about at all.
That was one of the issues that I had. I feel like you can be as colorblind as you want to, but for me, I hate it when people shove it down my throat. I hate it when you mess with my story and if I understand if you want to make a character a certain way, but the reason why comic books are the way that they are is because you can create new characters in these stories. Just don't mess with the original ones. Because it really breaks my heart and it really hurts my feelings.
That's been the backlash, though, is we want our own character. We want more characters' colors. Great. Here's Black Batman, and we're just like, no. We don't want. We're not trying to take your character.
Yeah,
We want our characters involved, and we've had this incredible surge of indie comics where, like, there was one that was black. That was like black people just because they had melanin just started getting superpowers and cops couldn't kill them. And I was like,
I actually love that. I just think, but I also look at the aspects of that with some colorblind casting that's been out there with theater and on films, it is allowed for people of color, for people of my race, for people of your race, to actually be in the film and to actually get out there and to be seen. And I go, oh my God, there's a Middle Eastern man, and I get excited because I don't get to see that, and that's why I say I honestly believe that colorblind casting has its place if it's done for the betterment of society and to bring that culture into the limelight and say, hey, there are these people too.
Okay,
and I'm
so
like, let's do it.
Then I have
If
an
it's an
example.
original story.
Yeah, if it's an original story, yes. Because then you have Ghost in the Shell.
And
well, but okay. I would want to differentiate between whitewashing and colorblind casting. Whitewashing is always evil, should never be done. Agreed?
Absolutely.
Agreed? Can we agree around the table? Last supper pose?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. but colorblind casting is different. But I believe colorblind casting only takes effect when the race of the character is an essential part, of either the history that it's placed in or the story that's being told. For instance, the importance of being earnest. The importance of being earnest is white people fucking around. Yeah. It is white people just fucking around in a time where the only black person in that play would be the butler. Like that is the story.
Yeah.
My version of it that I imagined was casting Jack as a black person, but nobody ever looks at them. So it's always back to Jack, and they never realize that he's a black person, or doing it somebody who passes or is high yellow, and sorry, super light-skinned, southern, super southern, super southern, but that passes, that flies under the radar, but then has these moments like with the butler, with other people, it's like, man, these white people fucked up, like, have those moments, but like, you gotta, like, but so many of the stories, so many of the common play, the thing, like, let's take, what did I just watch over on the 5th? It was Sound of Music. Sound of Music with an all-black cast is a very different story.
Yeah.
Even the Sound of Music.
Oh, the Wizard of Oz!
Sound of Music with one black kid, and the Nazis roll in and they're just like, we are here to talk to you. Where is Fraulein? Like, oh, and that kid, we got a camp for you. But the moments that I've always had in theater have always been, hey, I need you to not be black, or for it to, I need you to live in a world where you're not black.
Yeah.
Okay, now act. And that's always been my problem with colorblind casting. Is it's been a great excuse for white directors to get black people on stage to be like, did you see what we did? This theater casted so many people of color this season. What have you done?
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I guess so. I guess the point of when colorblind casting is okay is when the motivation behind it is not driven by somebody's own personal gain.
You're never going to know what the motivation behind it is.
Honestly, you're not. But I'm like, but my thing is, I'll take it when I can get it. Honestly.
Yeah.
I, as an actor, I mean, it's a good thing that I have a lighter skinned appearance, but if I go to somewhere else and I'm like, we want somebody who's a little more darker so that we can tell that they're Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and
I can tan my skin.
But I also don't put the sin of colorblind casting on actors because actors got to work.
Yeah.
Like that's really it.
Sometimes
the sin,
I do.
The sin of colorblind casting is one of production, is one of writing, is
Direction.
one of the behind the stage. Like it is directors. That is where the sin of it is. Because I have so many friends, especially in Seattle. They're actors. They got to act. That is how they have decided they are going to feed their family.
Yep.
That is how they've decided they wanted to live their life. That is their passion. That is their art. But it is not on them to find it. It is on everybody who uses their color, everybody who ignores it, everybody who skirts around it, but then goes to their little progressive march and is just like, we're here for you, but we're not going to pay you for what you are. Like that's where the sin of it is, and it's really holding the flame to directors, to producers, to theater companies to be like, you say you're progressive, but especially in Seattle, and it's what I think of as the sin of the stranger, the magazine sometimes, where it is queer culture, then this really big gap, and then black people are over here, and we'll talk about you. And I've had
and weed and porn.
Yeah, and it is a
Weed, porn, Dan
Yeah.
Savage.
And then way back, but in Seattle, we have a lot of we are progressive, we care about this thing, but we won't put on a play that our white audience doesn't want to see. So
yeah.
we're going to cast black people in a white play, get our white audience out, and then we're going to tell them how much we care about the black voice of America.
Wasn't there a play like that, Barbecue?
Not allowed to talk about any of those things. I worked for the city of Seattle, and that took place in my theater.
Does anybody remember Aida?
No.
It was on Broadway forever and ever and ever
Was that
ago.
the Spanish one?
No, that was it was headed up by I think Elton John, and I don't even know who else. But yeah, it was the original Roger from Rent,
Yes.
and but it took place in I don't know where in Africa, and it was basically a love story, forbidden love story between a white
Oh, wait a
dude
minute.
and,
Yep, I
and a
remember.
black woman.
Yep, I remember
or
that
an
one.
African woman, I should say. Great music direction. I actually don't even remember enough for the play to talk about it.
Okay, well,
But I mean, that one could not have been colorblind casting because it took place in Africa.
Thank you.
It could
That's
not have
what
been
I'm-
colorblind
But
casting.
and that's what I'm talking about. I don't mind it. I am actually doing eventually a color-centric television show, and it's
What, this one?
No, it's literally just casting those characters or those people that that you always hear that you would never see them cast as a main in anything else. You know, there are certain actors out there that are gingers and had to dye their hair brown in order to get cast in anything. Some English actors that I know of. And there was this one instance where I was in this film where I was the lead character, and my son killed himself. And it was, well, not killed himself, but he was shot by a white woman in a church. Yay, climates of what's going on in the world today when things like that have been happening. And, you know, there's Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter and all of those different movements that are going on. And I was approached by the director, who shall remain nameless. And, you know, she's really worried about casting a white woman opposite me in the role, having everything going on in the history, everything going on right now. And I told her, I was like, no. The casting that was done for this film was honestly the best and most appropriate casting that I could ever think of. Only because I feel like we need to stop hiding behind the things that are going on today and let people see it and understand that it's not always about color. Sometimes it's actually about mistakes, you know, that happen. And I've seen it. I've seen instances where, you know, there was mistaken identity, and it wasn't a situation where there was a white cop that was, oh, suspicious young black man. It was literally suspicious man under a hood, and you couldn't see his face, and you couldn't see the color of his skin or anything, and it was all mistaken identity. But then I've seen situations where it was completely different. And the only reason I can say that is because I've grown up on both sides of it. I've grown up on sides where I was in a place where, honestly, race didn't really exist. You could go out with your friends and go to a sports ball game together. Football, the best soccer that there is out there.
I love her sports ball.
And, and you guys could pal around.
You know what football is, right?
And
The World Cup. Football. Got it.
World Cup.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And everyone
my
could
language
pal around. Right? Everyone could pal around, and that's all it was. Whereas over here, there are divides, and you can feel the tension with those divides. And I am glad that we all have the opportunity as the people that we are right now to have the option of, if we want to cast whoever we want to cast in a film, we are allowed to, but I just don't think it's appropriate to mess with things that were already set in stone. That's just my opinion.
I can agree to a point.
Yeah.
And when I say I can agree to a point, it's like we were having this point of conversation of Ghost in the Shell. Okay, great. Whitewashing, great. What if? Not great.
Keep that one in.
Sorry.
Got you.
I will never think that is okay.
That's not okay. Sorry, that came out wrong. What I meant was, what if the director had decided to cast a half Japanese, half African woman?
In Ghost in the Shell?
Yeah.
That's still wrong.
Is it still?
I don't care. It is still wrong. The main character and the fact that they tried to change her face to look more Asian just killed me even more.
Right?
Wow.
Just
And
and ScarJo tried to freaking white explain it, didn't she?
yes, she did.
Just like Doctor Strange, the ancient one. Tilda freaking white explained too.
Well, I don't know.
Only reason I'm asking on this one is I'm giving this
Don't mess with my
is
anime.
okay. Yes, we have the story of the character. Yes, we have their backstory. How important? And I'm playing devil's advocate on this one because I'm.
Just get it in.
Because I'm like it annoyed the hell out of me too. But I'm just saying.
Understand, sir.
You angrily eating grapes.
I'm not.
Oh God! Now I got myself all distracted with it.
Maybe I am.
We know the story of the character. How important was her race?
So for Ghost in the Shell, and I just on the point, if they had cast a half Japanese, half black woman, for me, a lot of it in Ghost in the Shell was less of a racial appropriation and more of a cultural appropriation. If she was a culturally Japanese woman that they casted, and it wasn't like look at my big afro, I'm half black, but if it was like culturally Japanese. She was half black. I mean, my son is quarter black, but he looks 100% Portuguese. Like he flies under the radar all the time, and it took me 2 years to get him to identify as black, but we're there now. but like it would have been a much more nuanced conversation. I'm not saying it would be right or wrong, but it would have been a nuanced conversation that would have had a lot of angry people on both sides, but it would have had grounds to have been had.
Yeah, that's the reason why I'm actually asking the question. I mean, I will tell you right now, honestly, personally, I think what they did was just
Horrible.
for me it was kind of appalling, because they actually did a modern day blackface.
Yeah.
By making
absolutely.
her look more Asian.
And Asians have been dealing with it for so long.
There you go.
In anime.
And breaking out of anime as well, but like the Indian culture, everything that they've been going through, and as much attention as Aziz Ansari has been pulling onto them as well. He's been doing such an amazing job just being like, hey, we're right here, and we have way more than you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a moment in Better Off Ted where the white guy walks in and is like, "Oh, who's the lovely exotic lady?" And she's like, "Statistically, there are more of me than there are of you, so you're the exotic one."
Yes.
Like and I feel like that was a very good devil's advocate.
I had to make that point because I knew it was going to be a question that
Yes.
our listeners were going to ask.
But I mean, like,
But what's
Death Note,
really?
Death
What's
Note.
the? I mean, is it really
that didn't happen. There's 3 Indiana Jones. There's 5 Star Wars at this point, and there is no Death Note movie. We all agree on that.
There is a Death Note movie.
Right.
There is.
I was just going to say, but
It's kind of hard because it's right there on the next
No. There is a Death Note movie. It was made in the early 2000s. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there was that one.
Yes, yes.
Because
that one was beautiful.
But
I love that, and I actually watched that one compared to.
but I feel like jumping back into theater, there have been incredible examples of artistically displacing a script to point out the absurdity of the message through race.
Yeah.
Like one of the most brilliant moves I've seen was when in Jesus Christ Superstar Jesus was cast as a black woman, a big black woman, and the white world lit on fire. And the conversation that happened off of that, because it wasn't like most musical theater are puff pieces. They're fluff to get gray hairs into seats to keep buying tickets.
Yep.
Like in this day and age, like at one point in time they were art. Now they're just memories of a bygone era.
Yeah.
But we've also done this with other things. I've seen plays like Shakespearean plays ripped into Detroit or ripped into the Harlem Renaissance or something like that, where you strip it of the historic parts that make whiteness necessary or whiteness the norm, and then through the rest of the art pieces, through the rest of the sound, the set, and everything else, you can build out a message of a people using the same words, but as the words being a canvas versus the play.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, how many times have we seen? I'm not sure if you guys. How many times have we seen West Side Story done in the high school plays?
White high schools.
But I'm going to say this now. When I go and I sit there and I watch that, and because I want to support these kids, and I want to support them getting in the theater and the arts and being able to express themselves, and I get in there and I'm like, yeah, it's all white kids doing this, and I watch them and watch backstage and look in the backstage, and some of them are in tears because they get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so do I get mad that they're casting these white kids in this play because they get it?
But
And I'm like, at that point I can't.
Yeah.
I can't get mad because I'm like going, you know what? At this point, it's not about the audience. It's about these kids. And I'm like, they get it. I gotta let it go.
Sometimes it is literally about your casting pool. Like what you have to work with.
What about The Wizard of Oz with Queen Latifah?
The
And
Wiz?
The Wiz. Sorry, not Oz.
We literally Hamiltoned that 20 years before Hamilton came out for this reason.
Yes.
I think that was honestly the best Wiz that I have ever seen in all of the Wizzes. No offense to the early 1970s, 60s?
70s.
70s. But, I wasn't really in love with Queen Latifah's casting, but the new Dorothy, I've never seen her in anything else before. Beautiful. Her voice was amazing, and it was one of those times also that I saw, and I was very happy that they cast a plus size woman, a bigger woman, in a role of a small little white girl. Every single time. I was like, oh, good. Now I finally get to see someone my size, cast as the main character of something where she would usually, way back when, never get cast in, because of her race and because of the size of her body, too. that was one of my most exciting moments. And we actually did a night where it was just me and like other women of color watching the show and being the annoying loud black women in the theater, you know, saying, "Go ahead, girl, you got it. Go ahead, he's on down the road. He's on down. Yes." And it was okay. Nobody looked at us differently or anything because there's only us in the room.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I remember seeing like Blade in the theater, and I grew up white.
Yeah.
And I grew up white as well as a comic book nerd, sci-fi nerd, whatever. I didn't understand why there were so many black people in the theater. I was like, wait a minute, this guy is a vampire killer. This guy is a vampire killer.
He's killing white
Oh
vampires
wait,
too.
I know, right? And I'm like, well, to me it didn't register.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by the way, Wesley Snipes is black and Blade the character is black, blah blah blah. I didn't read the comic, but I was like, it was just a new experience to have so many like black people in the theater like yelling at the screen and being loud and like, you know, like just being overjoyed about it. And I was like, they did the same thing for what was it, Queen of the Damned with Aaliyah?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, wait. But the same thing flipped in my brain, and I was like, wait, this is Anne Rice. There's a lot of white vampires. There's a lot of white vampires.
I will not do the call.
Do you know this is not a black movie?
She's
like
killing a lot.
Yeah.
Not that I can.
Django Unchained. like had to put on 2 condoms to watch the movie.
That was so much retribution.
It answered the question. It much like Inglourious Bastard asked and answered the question: is there ever too many dead Nazis on screen? We found out no.
Yep.
Watch in the theater, murder them all. Everybody's fine. Walked out. High fives. Like this answered like, if a slave kills a bunch of ex-slave kills a bunch of white slave owners, is that a problem? I mean, like, no, don't get me wrong. Samuel Jackson did a superb, not Samuel Jackson. Yes, Samuel Jackson did a superb job in that movie, and died in a beautiful death. But like, that movie made my eyes pregnant.
I think he's officially blacker than you.
She's British. She's not
British,
black.
doesn't count.
She was British, and I'm raised by like Clantown white people. So together we make about half a black person. I'm just most of that half.
Yeah. The same way I'm not really Puerto Rican.
I think that's the end of this segment.
I think we're good.
Yeah, we just fell off.
How long?